Hey everyone, in this video we are going to look at how to add an animated or flashing glow effect to an object. There's a lot of reasons why you do this. Maybe you want an object to be some kind of proximity detector. And so as you approach a target, the object flashes to indicate that you're closer to it. So that's one reason. Maybe an object is going to self-destruct and you want it to flash and glow to let you know that it is going to self-destruct. So that kind of thing. There's lots of applications for this. Now, getting an actual glow effect is easy. Making it animated takes a couple lines of code. I do want to clarify that what I'm going to do here is for this, the default 3D project. If you choose HDRP or Universal Pipeline, you won't have to do the installation step that I'm going to show you. I'm going to skip the installation, but I'll show you how to do it because I don't want you to, I don't want to waste your time and have you sit around and watch an installation. But this is only if you choose the default 3D project. So, and also this applies to version 2020.1. I'm not sure at what point things change, but unfortunately, Unity has changed how post-processing has worked throughout the years. So that's really the full disclosure. This is 2020.1 and it's the default 3D project, not HDRP or URP. So the first thing, you go to Window, you go to Package Manager, you make sure this is set to Unity Registry, and you choose Post-Processing. Again, I don't know why this wouldn't be installed by default. One of my complaints about Unity is that it does not make for a great new user experience. So post-processing, you click on Install. Like I said, I already installed it because I don't want to waste your time, and that has been installed. Now, for post-processing to apply, you actually have to do a couple things. So you click on your main camera and you have to choose a post-processing layer up here. And post-processing layer actually has two different meanings, as you'll see in a second. So you can just choose whatever you want to call it. You can call it PPO, you can call it glow, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just letting you, the user, know. So once you've created that layer, you just select it. Step one. Okay. Step two, you now have to add a component that's known as a post-processing layer. So if you click on Add Component and you go to Rendering, sorry, I clicked on the wrong one, Rendering, see these components? These would not be here, okay? So this is part of what installing the post-processing package does. So we're going to click on Post-Processing Layer. For Layer, you need to choose the same layer. So it's important that you do that. So this and this have to match, okay? Now, after you've done that, you now have to add a post-processing volume. And this is one of the things that's changed. I've seen earlier versions where the post-processing volume had to be its own separate object. So I'm not quite sure what's going on with that. But you can just add it here, at least in version 2020.1. So you're adding a post-processing layer and then a post-processing volume. We set it to global. As far as the profile, you click on new. However, I've attempted to record this a few times, so I already have one. So I'll just click on the one that I already have, but you could just click on new and it will just populate it there. And I already have a bloom effect out there because of that. So what we can do is I can remove that just so you see how it works. So you have your profile. Then you just click on Add Effect, Unity, and Bloom, and now we're back to right where we were. So we set the intensity. This can be whatever value you want. It's really arbitrary, depends how much of a glow you want. And what's the threshold? We'll leave it at 1 so more muted colors don't glow. And that's about it to make this work. So you install post-processing, you set up a post-processing layer, you add the post-processing layer component, you set the same layer there, you add a post-processing volume, you set the global, you create a profile just by clicking on new, then you click on add effect, which is down here now since we have an effect, and then you choose the threshold and intensity that you want. So if I haven't forgotten anything, that should now work. So let's go to game object, 3D object, and we'll just create a sphere. So let's put that at like 0, 0. I'm There it is. Let's actually bring it closer. Now what you need to do, you need to create an emissive material. So to create material, it's just right-click, create, and then material. And I've already done that. I called it glow matte, and you click on it. And all you do is you select a default color if you want. And when you click, see how it says emission, you put a check there, and then you click on your color. So yeah, sorry for skipping that. So emission, check, click on the color, and then I'm going to set these to RGB 0 to 1.0 because it's easier to make it coordinate with the code that you're going to see in a minute. So to get yellow, it's R1, G1, and intensity 0 because these are the two elements we're going to modify in code. We're going to, or more accurately, we're going to modify the intensity. Okay. So what we do now, we have our sphere and we have our glow mat. And sure enough, you can see there is a ever so slight glow to it already. So now we just want to animate it. So what we're going to do, we're going to take this script, which I'm going to review, and we just put it on the object. Now, this is something I've been doing new with these tutorials. I haven't been doing as much typing. People felt that it really made the videos too long because they can just pause the video anyways. So I just do a line-by-line explanation, but no sense sitting me here clickety-clack on the keyboard. So we'll open up that script. So two things. First of all, you need to call the coroutine that we're about to write. In fact, in a previous attempt to record this, I forgot to. I even said I was going to forget to, and I still forgot to. So keep that in mind. Whenever you're creating an IEnumerator coroutine, it will never ever execute itself. It must be called. I can't tell you how many times I've written a coroutine and it doesn't run. It's just because I didn't call it. So even though this comes in first as far as sequentially, it's actually the last thing you do because this doesn't exist. If you try typing this, it won't know what it is until you've created the corresponding routine. Okay, so just know you need to do that. That when you're done writing the coroutine, you then have to say when do you want to call it. I'm doing it in the start section for simplicity's sake. But like I said, in your case, it might be based on proximity. So maybe there's a collider, or it might be based on a timer. Maybe something is going to self-destruct when its HP gets below a certain level. So there's lots of reasons why you would create an animated effect. I'm just using this to show you that it works. Okay, so outside of start, outside of update, you'll type IEnumerator and then you call it whatever you want with parentheses to follow. You then need the typical brackets. First line, yield return new wait for seconds, and then a certain amount of time measured in seconds. So I'm not going to go into a deep explanation of exactly what this does. Just know that this line as a whole creates a delay before the things in the brackets execute. Well, actually, not the things in the brackets. Anything after it doesn't necessarily have to have brackets. In this case, we do. So anything after this gets executed when that amount of time passes. In this case, the game I took it from them working on, I needed a 1/10 of a second delay. You might have an even shorter delay. You might have a longer delay because maybe you're trying to synchronize it with some other event. So basically, this is your synchronizing a delay. So you're waiting for something to happen before you want this to start. In this case, it was 1/10 of a second. Okay, so a for field, for those of you who are old school like me, we used to call these for next because the loop was bookended by for at the beginning and then next at the end. We don't need next because nowadays they just use squiggly brackets. So for and then parentheses. First, you declare what kind of variable it is. It's a float. Then you say, what's the name of the variable? We're just going to call it glow intensity, and we're going to set it to 1. Then a semicolon. Now you're saying, so long as that variable that we just declared is less than a certain value, semicolon, increment it. Okay. So what type of variable? What's the name of the variable? What's its initial value? What's the upper limit? What do we do? What's the increment, I should say, to get closer to that upper limit? And then this is what you do based on this happening over and over again. So what you're doing is you're creating a loop. You're creating a loop and it's measured on a certain amount, going up to a certain amount with a certain increment. And it just so happens that we want to actually use this value in our command. Now, you might not necessarily do that. You might actually have a variable that you use simply, say it's 1 to 10, and you don't use the value. In this case, we're actually using the value for the purposes of a calculation. So get component mesh renderer. So if we look at our sphere, it has a mesh renderer. So we're saying get that component. Now drill down to the material. So here's materials. And now we want to set color. We want to go to the set color. So if you now go down to the material itself, so you're starting at the mesh renderer, you're drilling down to the mesh renderer, now you've gone to the material itself, and this is what I was pointing at a few seconds ago. Emission color, we said that you had to set emission. Now, unless something's changed, if you make a typo here, it won't work and you don't get an error. For whatever reason, if I recall correctly, Unity will not give you an error if you make a typo. So it's underscore emission color with a capital C, everything in quotes, comma, and then what color multiplied by the glow intensity. Remember when we clicked on here and we said this intensity here? Well, that's going on. Now, they don't quite use the same mathematics because this is R and G, red and green of 1 and 1 with an intensity of 0. Well, here we actually want to start with an intensity of 1. If you start with an intensity of 0, it will be basically off. So the math doesn't match for some reason, but that's the approach that they've taken. So get component mesh renderer, material, set color, emission color. What's new color? Again, there's R and G. That gives us yellow, and it's multiplied by this variable. Now, some will say, hey, you don't want to keep grabbing get component mesh renderer. That is resource intensive. They're 100% correct that get component is resource intensive, but as I've said many times, whenever I first write a program, it's for clear, basically understandability of what's going on. That I want to be able to look at that code and know exactly what's going on. I don't want spaghetti code at this point. So when it comes to optimization, yes, you absolutely need to be mindful of that. You'd probably create a variable up here that grabs the renderer, that grabs the mesh renderer component, and then you use that variable here rather than doing get component. So yes, you can do things like that to make it less resource intensive. But again, for the purposes of demonstration, I'm not worried about optimization. I'm worried about how clear of an explanation I can give you. And when I'm designing for myself, it's about being able to clearly and simply understand what I'm doing. And then we just create a delay because you don't want it to change too fast. So this is arbitrary. This is for aesthetic purposes. How fast do you want it to change? And then that's it. It loops again. So because this keeps going on until this threshold has been met. So until this variable equals this, these changes will keep going on. And you can see it's not much of a change. It's only 0.05. So we save this. And if I didn't forget anything, that should work. Sure enough, it is slowly glowing more. So you may find for your purposes that is too slow. If I recall correctly, I think I was doing a self-destruct, and so I wanted there to be like a 30 or 60-second timer for the self-destruct. So basically, the ship was glowing more and more and more until it eventually burst. Okay, now that's kind of slow. So what you could do is you could speed this up. And also, this is only half of the coding because this is making it get brighter, but it doesn't turn around. We want it to we want it then to get dimmer again. So we want this to go faster, which means that we need a small number here. So let's make it 1/100th of a second and see how quickly that moves. Should be much faster. Might be too fast now. There we go. That actually looked pretty good. And just keep in mind that if you're changing this, you might also have to change the intensity of the glow because this is happening faster, so there's less of a delay. So you might need to change how much of a change there is per cycle. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to copy this and we're going to reverse it. And let's hope I don't make a mistake. So we'll just set it to 8. And then if glow intensity is greater than 1, then we want to subtract. So in other words, you just flipped it. Rather than starting at 1, ending at 8 with an increment of 0.05, you're starting at 8, ending at 1 with a decrement. Is that a real word? You're decreasing by 0.05. So you just reverse direction. And then you would just say, do it again. So yes, a coroutine can be auto-recursive. You can make it happen over and over again. You can have it call itself, but it still needs to be called externally once. This will never ever execute the first time unless it's been called. But then once you do, you can have it call itself. So let's see if I made any mistakes. There you go. You now have an animated glow. You might not want it to have that much of a difference. Like for instance, it basically goes to, even though it's an intensity of 1, it's basically almost no glow. And now you could speed it up some more. There's a few ways to do it. Like you could make the glow intensity, the increment be different. Like say we double that. And maybe you might not want it to go all the way to 8. Maybe that's a little bit too bright. So maybe you want it to be 7. And again, since one is a reverse of the other, make sure that any change you make to one, you change to the other, unless you don't want it to be symmetrical. Like maybe you want it to uh, glow and heat up faster and cool down slower. Maybe that is an important part of the gameplay. So I'm having it be symmetrical. You might not want it to. Just as you can heat something up quickly and it cools down slowly, like you can heat up a frying pan over a matter of seconds, but it takes minutes to cool down. So you might not want this to be symmetrical. I'm just presuming that you do. So you can always change it. Okay, I think that just about does it for this tutorial. I hope that you found this helpful. If you did, please leave a like and comment about anything else you'd like to see. I'm trying to determine exactly what you guys want to see because it's kind of been all over the place. I've posted some tutorials that do well, and then I post other tutorials that are similar and do very poorly. So I don't know if it's just YouTube being YouTube or if I'm just not being very useful. So please let me know, and that should about do it. And please enjoy the rest of your day.